Hi, I'm Randy Pearson, Vice President of Life and Annuities for Gordon Marketing, and today with me I've got Paul Bechtold, the manager of our very successful Your Family Bank program, the program that helps consumers get out of debt while assisting agents in selling lots of life insurance. And today we're going to be talking about those consumers who have no debt and how we help them. Stay tuned. All right, Paul, so Your Family Bank, the debt elimination program, most agents would say, hey, if the client has no debt, that leaves me with nothing to do, right? But that may not be the case, I assume?
That is correct. Okay. Obviously, if somebody has debt, that's what the program is designed to do. The impact is going to be much more instantaneous. We're going to see an effect right away, but it can also be used for people that don't have any debt. You know, Nelson Nash pioneered the infinite banking philosophy about 50 years ago with products, by the way, that were far less superior than what we have today, okay? And showed people how to successfully become their own bank, okay? How to earn interest off of all the cash flow that was coming through their economy before they gave that money away, okay? So what I'd like to share with you is a couple of recent conversations. You and I discussed these before. A couple clients that came along and said, well, I like this concept, but I'm really not really concerned about my debt so much, but how could I make money off of my living expenses or the expenses running through my business? So the first guy wanted to take a look at what $10,000 a month would look like of the expenses that he has running through his personal economy. Well, I ran a report on this 41-year-old guy. I ran it till he's 70. And for the money that he was going to give away and earn nothing on, he's going to make $2.5 million that could supplement his retirement tax-free and is guaranteed. All
right. So you're funneling his cash flow through a life insurance policy
as a pass-through type of account.
And the client is taking the money out of the policy in the form of loans.
Correct.
Right? Isn't that a cumbersome process? Isn't that complicated or difficult?
Actually, no, it's not. Once you get used to this concept as a pass-through account, we treat it just like we would a bank account. Now, we can't get our money quite as fast as we can going down to the bank and getting it the same day. We can usually have the money back in our possession within 5 business days. Okay. So what we can do in this case, we're going to make a loan request at the beginning of every month. We're going to request a loan. That money will be in his personal economy, back in his account. He can use that money to spend it, okay? And then over the course of the loan, as the cash flow runs into his bank accounts, he can use it to repay the loan and just repeat the process every month. Can actually be set to a greater degree, set up online where he really doesn't have to manage hardly anything. Maybe a one-piece loan request in some cases with one of the carriers we use.
All right. So interesting first example. You said you had more?
Yeah, well, I took the same thing with another gentleman who ironically came along at about the same time, and we looked at something for $20,000 a month coming through his business, okay? And the upshot of that is he's going to be making over $6 million that he otherwise would have given away, and it just so happened that he was about the same age, 41 years old. So we looked at it over, the course of his working years and, showed him how of the money that you're going to give away, you could be earning interest along the way and eliminating what we call lost opportunity cost. That's the real secret to it.
So, I certainly caught my attention, $20,000 monthly premium. I'm sure most agents out there would love to write cases of that size. However, how big does a case have to be where you can really get this kind of leverage? What kind of premiums are we talking on the other side of the spectrum?
Well, you can do anything from $1,000, $2,000 a month and on up to those bigger cases, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, $100,000 cases if the business is big enough and the insurable interest is there for that kind of a death benefit. But the bigger the business, the more insurable interest that there's going to be and the more assets that person is going to own.
Interesting. And then you said you had one more example?
Well, I had another gentleman as well. He had a couple of existing life insurance policies, and we showed him how to do something similar. He wasn't worried about debt at all, but he had these 2 life insurance policies that were fairly inefficient. They were from another carrier that didn't have near the bells, whistles, and features, had an 8% loan rate to take loans from his policy. So we showed him how we could redirect those policies into a much better policy with a lower loan interest rate, and by the way, pick up additional benefits along the way, living benefits like long-term care, chronic illness rider, that kind of thing as well.
Interesting. So generally speaking, and this applies to your family bank cases in the 500 to 2,000 range, up to the $20,000 range, what kind of financial opportunities are out there for the agent in these scenarios?
Well, when we start scratching the $10,000 a month premiums, you're talking about $23,000, $25,000 commission. And here's the other thing too, and I think you touched on it a little bit, and we talked about this last gentleman. There are all kinds of old type of life insurance policies out there that could be funneled right in on a 1035 transfer into a newer, better kind of policies that has additional bells, whistles, and features that weren't available 5 years ago.
Yeah, and really improving the consumer's position,
Exactly.
right? I think that's important, especially when we talk on these episodes, Selling Life and Annuity episodes, about compensation to the agent. Look, that's important. The advisor has to be able to stay in the business to provide a valuable service, and they deserve to make a reasonable compensation on these sales. But it is important to note, particularly in the Your Family Bank program, that we are structuring these contracts to be incredibly consumer friendly, right?
Yes.
Probably the most financially advantageous life insurance structures that a consumer could ever buy, right? So it's an important thing to note. Now listen, unfortunately, and this is a really interesting topic, but we've run out of time for this episode. So for agents who are interested in getting involved in the Your Family Bank program, Paul, how would they proceed?
Send me an email, paul@gordonmarketing.com. Call me directly, 317-626-3054. Available 24/7 for the most part, except after 11 o'clock. But anyway, just call me. I'll be glad to get in touch with you and see what we can do to help your client and get a nice fat check in your pocket.
Very good. Unfortunately, for now, this episode of Selling Life and Annuities must come to an end. But I would encourage advisors who are watching this video, although Your Family Bank sounds like a complicated program and you're really diving into the weeds, it's really not that tough for agents, especially when you got a guy like Paul who can help guide you through the process. Listen, do me a favor as we exit this video, click subscribe and the notification bell at the bottom so that every time we come out with some fantastic new content that's going to help you make more sales and earn more money in the insurance business, you'll be sure and be notified. Stay tuned and happy selling.